Brock. So again, we are not facilitating campaigning. We're just facilitating the conversation about campaigning. So you can kind of leave off some of the details of exactly what you're running for. We're talking about the general position that you're running for, and talk about how you're thinking about being an independent candidate, and why you think there's a real viable possibility for an outcome, and what types of creative and innovative campaign solutions have to be in place to really create that outcome.
Well, the reason that I'm running for the position I'm running for, really, a little bit of background, I've been an investigative journalist for the last 14 years and an activist. I'm based in Houston, Texas. And in that time, done everything from attending city council for homelessness issues, police accountability, health, water treatment, you name it. Been there, done that, city council meetings, been ignored by the council, been ignored, had the emails ignored, had the letters ignored. Also protested on their offices, marched on their offices. Also, as a journalist, put a camera and a microphone in front of them and asked them hard questions. And every time, it was a combination of being ignored, being avoided, literally running away from questions in some cases. And overall, myself and then the other activists and just people of Houston that I've worked with, the experience is very similar. People take their time out of their day to go to a city council meeting at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. They get off work, they get off school, and they hang out there for a couple hours. They dress up all nice, they get their speech written, and they get 2 to 3 minutes, and then they're told next. And there's no accountability. There's no effort really. And I essentially just got sick of kind of going down that role. Like, okay, I've done everything I could as a journalist. He's running away from me. I've done everything going to council and doing it as an activist. Maybe I need to be a candidate. And really, it was just about, this is the second time that I'm running. I ran in 2019. It was just about getting on stage with the previous candidate, who's now about to be, he's terming out this year, so that I could confront him about these important issues and put him on the record and do it on a stage and do it on radio and on television, because there's this really interesting thing with politics that I totally disagree with, that Derrick Broze, the local journalist, radio show host, activist, has gotten some coverage and been in some circles, but you throw a candidate for mayor next to my name and all of a sudden I'm getting invited to high schools, old folks homes, rich neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, Democratic groups, Republican groups. So for me it was very much just about that access and trying to promote the issues that I know that are important to the people that I work with, care about, and that are never discussed on local elections, at least in my experience. They're very vague, they're very general. Traffic, flooding, Houston floods, so it's like, we're going to fix the traffic, this latest freeway project, we're going to fix the flooding and this, and Houston has 4.5 million people in the greater Houston area. There's 200,000 registered voters. It's less than 5% of the entire city that decides the mayor for the 4th largest city in the country. And most of those voters are in their 70s and 80s and above. There's, I think, less than 1% of anybody under 30 that votes at all. And I believe it's because of the focus, because of the way that the campaigns are run. It's all stereotypical red, white, and blue. The campaigns look like they come out of a cookie cutter kind of thing. There's really nothing that I see that's going to generate interest for anybody under 40 or 50, really who is passionate. So the approach that we've taken in 2019 and that we're taking again this year is to talk about real issues and to do them in a way that is practical. So for example, just a couple days ago, I announced the plan that I'm calling Regenerate Houston, and it's about how do we address flooding? Again, it's something I know that people care about, homeowners care about, but I don't. My personal perspective is to not just let's create new departments or let's throw money at things and assume that's going to solve things. I'm also a permaculture certified teacher, so I'm bringing permaculture into the conversation and talking about regenerative agriculture and saying we should plant native plants along the bayous, and Texas just recently legalized industrial hemp. We should plant hemp along the bayous as well. They both help with flooding and erosion, and just different innovative ideas that these other politicians are not even. It's not even in their world. They're totally out of touch. Even the younger ones, because they're tied to the main two parties basically. So we're trying to be very innovative in both idea and approach. Of course, I'm the only campaign that is even going to any of the campuses, going to the University of Houston or the community colleges, or they don't even bother because, again, they don't show up. But my belief is it's because nobody's speaking their language. Nobody's talking about anything that they care about. So we're bringing in, again, addressing ideas like concerns about the environment or flooding, but trying to do it in an innovative way. And also my real purpose, I'm an activist at heart, and I'm a journalist who cares about the truth. I'm not a politician. I'm actually more of an anarchist. I don't believe that political change is really the way to affect true change. I'm doing this because to affect the culture, I need to be in that conversation. Like I said, the doors have opened up for Derrick Broze, candidate for mayor of Houston, and that has allowed me to speak to the high school kids, to speak to the older folks, and a lot of people resonated with the campaign, even if they would say things like, I like your ideas, but you're too young, or you're not experienced enough, or I like you, but this guy's going to win. And that's how people are. Like, they want to be a part of a winning team. So even if they love the ideas and they think I got the right spirit, oftentimes they go with where the money's at. And right now, the 5 other main candidates have raised over $1.5 million each, and there's actually 12 people running, but what I learned on local elections, at least in Houston, the local media collaborate with them, and they report, here are the 5 candidates running for office. They don't tell people there's 12 other candidates. You know, I got invited to most of the forums in 2019, but there were groups that did what they could to keep me out. And they actually, this is my point to wrap up here, is that I don't believe that the conversation should just be around like coming up with new creative ways to reach people. I'm doing that as well, but in my heart of hearts, the system is corrupted to the core. I mean, my campaign is about exposing the corruption in City Hall and trying to amplify the voices of the people, because the city is specifically set up to avoid listening to people. I won't say the position, I'll avoid that, but the position I'm running for is essentially a dictatorship. Houston has the strongest position in the entire country, and it allows where there's 16 members of the council, but only one person gets to decide what issues go on the agenda, what issues get voted on. So even if you had all 16 council members listening to their constituents, phone calls, letters, whatever, this position gets to decide what happens and what doesn't. And in my experience as an activist, I've seen it time and time again. We've done the coalitions. We've had the support of 5 or 6, 7 council members, and it didn't make a single difference. So my campaign is about calling that out, and the main plank of the campaign is that I'm trying to take away the power of the position I'm running for. I'm calling to amend the city charter to take away the power and give it back to the council.
That's incredibly profound. Thank you very much. So Rock Backs, I'm going to bring you on the spotlight for a second, and hearing everything that Derrick shared, I'm curious what advice you have for him as a candidate.
Well, based upon the background and everything that you've done leading up to this, I assume you understand, the sort of risks and everything that you potentially expose yourself to, and that you've got the courage to step up to it. Courage is my favorite virtue. Without it, all others fail. And so I commend you for, having a view and the reasons for why you're doing it. What advice? I don't know this jurisdiction. I haven't studied, what sort of possibilities exist. You've noted that young people, are not part of the conversation because they're not inspired by, or the messages they're hearing doesn't resonate. And so you really need to figure out how to connect with that group. They're the sleeping giant. The moment the youth comes to the realization of how much power they have, that their apathy and their lack of participation is what's allowing the status quo to persist or even exist. The moment they wake up to the reality that they can affect change, the type of change that you're talking about, and we've seen it with technology and, whatever your views are on TikTok or otherwise, these channels exist, to get out the word, for that message to get there. And I'd probably be talking to every, young local social media influencer, because it's, they're nodes on a network. You don't have to be able to reach all of them, but if you can activate that, that's, as they say, the revolution won't be televised. And so if you think that traditional media, is going to be, give you a fair shot, obviously that doesn't mean you don't knock on those doors. You got to do everything you can. But I think it's just like Brett Weinstein said yesterday, you have to have, back doors, strategies to flank, the same playbook. That standard playbook that you mentioned is not going to do it. And so you've got to get creative, and you've got to figure out how to get your message out differently. But happy to discuss further. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I'll just say to that, so the one benefit I do have is that having done this work for 10 years before even running for office and then doing it again is, I've already got a following through my journalism and my channels, but of course they're not based in where I'm living and where I'm running in Houston. So now we're focused on building that local support, and last time we did all the traditional stuff, block walking, phone banking, etc. We had to twist a few elbows to get the local media to follow the FCC equal time rule, because they don't tell candidates that, hey, if they give this candidate an interview at Tuesday at 7 p.m. on the station, you can contact them and say, I get that same time. Most of them complied, but a few I had to, go back and forth with. One completely ignored us because he knew I didn't have a lawyer behind me to do anything about it, and told me, you're not a viable candidate, we're not running the interview, after they already...
You don't have a lawyer that can do that?
I did have a lawyer back at the time.
You do now?
So I don't at the moment, so...
Well, that's another thing, and you've got people here at this event,
Yeah,
and many more that are connected to people at this event, that can, find you a bulldog,
So we leverage the traditional and the new stuff is what I was getting at, So when they tried to block us out of traditional media, I put out the interview that they wouldn't release through my social media channels and called them out publicly, use the campaign as a way to say, look, they're not even telling you how many people are running. They're not even giving us all a fair shot. So, definitely would love to speak more about it.
Yeah, I sued Houston on their ballot access laws with respect to... I did. I happen to be in Houston, so I love beating up on Houston because they are so obtuse. So I will give you my phone number. There's no reason why you shouldn't have legal counsel. And by the way, for all candidates, you need to have legal counsel on your staff. Even if it costs money, you got to have the legal backing when you're running the problem. I'm sure the experienced candidates do. But let me give you a number. I have local counsel as well. I work with, and that's amazing that they would step forward and do that. What I was struck with, I'm shocked. The piece of information you just gave is that Houston has essentially a 200,000 active electorate. Is that what you were saying? And out of that city that size, some of the old school door-to-door campaigning may work in that. I'm not discounting. You've got to do. Brock is absolutely correct. The sleeping giant is the youth vote, and you know how to connect with that. But there's 200,000 voters that you can knock on their doors and you get some face time with them.
There's a huge opportunity.
You have to.
I see it as a target whose doors to knock on. It's real important to have the correct data.
Now we have
because you can't knock on doors randomly.
Correct. You got to go to the 4 whys.
We do have the voter data that it didn't have in 2019. Since just like anything, the first round we did it, we learned so much. This time we're starting off a little stronger. I will say it's not only the youth as well, though, because with the numbers that low, if you activate any, for example, there's not a single candidate that wins a majority in Houston. It's always a runoff because nobody gets 51%, so there's always the top 2, and then they have to do another runoff. So there's not even enough vote for somebody to win even off the bat.
See, that's a shocking statistic, the low number of voters.
Throughout the United States, municipal elections, usually have sub 10%, 5% of the voter base. These are the easiest. We talk about the presidential elections. The areas where independents can have the greatest success are in areas like this because the bar is actually so low.
It's a lot of work, but you have the personality and you have the message to go forward, and you clearly. Apparently, I believe that there's a two-pronged approach in elections now. The youth vote is more tech and media driven, but the older vote is still, the negative campaigning aside of the airways, which is too expensive to get involved with. The retail politics still works.
David Broze, everyone, please. Round of applause.
Chris, can I just add one quick thing? I just want to say that my key plank that I mentioned to you guys about taking away the power of this position, I ran on this in 2019, I'm running again. After the 2019 election, a coalition of groups came together and got the petitions, and now this year, Houstonians can vote to take away the power of that position.
Wow.
All right.